Hello educators, this is video lesson 2C, and in this video lesson we're going to be talking about something that we call in math class independent learning time. Independent learning time is nothing fancy. It is just us using breakout rooms at the second half of our class, towards the second half, last 20-30 minutes of class, to facilitate students practicing these skills on their own. But the reason I'm making this video is really twofold. Number one, is as simple as this concept is, it's really actually the best learning we think that most of our students are doing each day. And we find that the days that we don't carve out 20 or 25 minutes in remote learning for students to practice the skill on their own that we showed in the whole class lesson, it doesn't matter how good our whole class lesson is. If students don't have space and time every day to practice the skill on their own that we did in some type of whole class or small group supported lesson. So I'm really kind of showing this number one to stress that no matter how cool pair deck lessons or breakout teams or anything else might look, finding students time in small groups with an adult who can support them by screen sharing and other things is really the most productive thing we found during remote learning, assuming there was kind of a good lesson before that independent piece started. And the second reason we're going to show this is just kind of some of the slides that we've built out that make it easy for students to work independently, as you're going to find your students end up at very different places after you get a couple weeks into your math work usually. So what we're going to show here is the main template or the main slide we use each day for this type of activity. This is again in our main slides, the slides that our students are in every day. And lately, if we're doing our lessons right, every single day has an independent learning piece for the last 20 or 30 minutes where students are usually on IXL or Khan Academy, sometimes Flipgrid, to really be practicing the skills that we've talked about on their own. I'm going to put this into full screen so it's, oh, that didn't work well, never mind. So I'm going to take that out of full screen and we'll still be able to see, sorry. But what you see here on the left side is this is really the template that shows students what they are supposed to be doing during this time. We find even when we say things out loud that students can be, understandably with remote learning, a little unclear about what they're supposed to be doing. If they're a little behind or ahead, that definitely happens. So we use this table each week kind of to highlight our main learning. We're trying to keep it simple, 2 or 3 main assignments we want students to be able to work through proficiently by the end of the week. And we try to give them guidelines about what they should be working on each day and when we think these things should get finished. So for example, this is from a class that's going to be on Thursday, and we're highlighting this point to say, hey, we think this is your main learning for the week. We think most students should be on Y1 by now, and this is where you should be working your time. And also, of course, that's going to be what our lesson earlier that day with breakout teams and pair deck focused on building skills for, so they'd be ready to do Y1 or Y9 when they're here on their own now. And then what it does, the rest of it is really helping out. You're going to get students who get ahead of you each week, who say by Tuesday, I've done all this stuff, what comes next? And then we just use this here, we call it pushing for mastery, and we help students understand by showing everybody, hey, this is if you're way ahead of us. This is kind of how to push for mastery, or maybe what's coming the following week if you want to get a head start on some of that. Over here, we just use links to make it easy for students, for us, Khan Academy and IXL, and like you, most of the things are in Backpack now, so we give them a simple button here. This picture, any of these pictures are really just active links that would take them to Clever. And the way that you make these pictures an active link, any picture I drop into the slide, all I need to do, see this little link button right here. If I click that, it would allow me to create any link that I want, and that picture becomes a link, or that image becomes a link, just the same that hyperlinks would when you type text. So this keeps it simple for our students. We can kind of show them visually. Surprisingly, we have to do this a lot with remote learning. This is how you get to your IXL or Khan Academy, and it keeps it simple for them as they can just touch this button and then click whichever program they're using that day. The last thing down here that we'll highlight and show you the logistics on Zoom a little bit quickly for is how we use breakout rooms. As we have multiple adults, the real key is to get kids in rooms of 5, 6, 8 students so that they're comfortable sharing their screens and talking to that adult more, and that adult can kind of focus on just a handful of kids instead of worrying about 24 kids or something. So we use the rename function here. We try to keep the numbers consistent with the breakout teams to help students out, but that just sees here, they can tell us in the chat box, or even better, use the rename functions. And so here's what that looks like in Zoom. In Zoom, for our students, first off, you need to allow them to rename themselves. They could say in the breakout room, I want room number 2, and that's fine, you might see it, but it's even better if they just change their name to put a number in front of it. So right here you see I can go ahead And in the More button, this is right when I open the participants, I can check off Allow Participants to rename themselves. And now that way, when students rename themselves, and I should have had someone in here to show it, but if they rename themselves, they're actually going to pop up to the very top of the list. If they put a 1 or a 2 or a 3 in front of their name, it'll be very much at the top of the list, and it's easy to push those kids to their breakout rooms right away based on their choice of which teacher they feel like they'll work best with for those 20 minutes. Beyond that, I love this template too for me because not only does it help anchor students, and we always say, go look at this tells you what you need to be working on. And we're nice, we're respectful to them. We just go show them, we share screen again and say, hey, that's right here, it shows you what comes next. But it's really easy for us as teachers to recreate this. You just duplicate that, just simply copying that slide by copy and paste. And then if you duplicate it for the next day or the next week, you just make the few changes you need for however the learning is shifting or progressing that week. On that note, while we're here, I will show very quickly. For our students, we also, because IXL is something they do on their own, it's kind of their homework piece, we do provide kind of an overview of the week. And you see I'm behind this week. I haven't created videos for all of them. But one nice thing you could do is if you're comfortable creating screen recordings for something like IXL or Khan Academy, we do try to create and easily show students how they can link out to these videos where it's us as teachers actually working through those IXL problems and to kind of support them a bit for homework with some of that asynchronous content. So that's like the great way to organize some of this. And we try to make sure, for example, that our last slide, or that as we look at some of these things in the agenda, that we link to that stuff as well so that students know that they can get to that. So each day that we're kind of going through this, we remind students, hey, if you go back up to that top IXL page, there's a bunch of resources there, but that's really more for when they're working asynchronously. Hope this was helpful. If you want to chat about any of this, my email address is right here. It's ddoherty3@bostonpublicschools.org. And I'm always happy to connect with math teachers or any teachers as we work together to try to become better at remote learning. So thank you for reaching out to me, sharing those ideas with me that have helped me continue to learn more. And thank you very much for watching to the end of the video.